Good morning, everyone. Hope you're all well and keeping safe in these challenging times. Today, we're going to give you a roundup of May, so what's been happening in the financial, mainly currency markets in the month of May. It's been a memorable month for all of us, one we're never going to forget, I suspect. It's the main story right now, and the main thing on everyone's minds is the global coronavirus pandemic, which has been with us since the start of the year and really dominated our lives since March, really. Like me, as you can see, you're probably all locked down at home right now and been working from home. So excuse the kitchen behind me, but here I go, give you a little bit of a rundown on what we've been seeing happening. So as I mentioned, the news has been dominated by coronavirus, and it's on the front of every paper and taking up all of the papers and all of the news headlines every day. In terms of the impact that's had on the currency markets, we've actually seen a relatively normal May. It's not been overly volatile. The ranges we've seen in the major currency pairs have been about what we'd expect to see normally. So if you look at sterling dollar over the course of the month, we've seen a high. We started the month about 126, and we've seen a lower of 120, just below 121, which is fairly standard. And against the euro, we've seen the high of 115 start of the month and the low just above 111. So 4 or 5 cents movement in a month is pretty usual. Extraordinary would be movements that we saw in March. So in March, we saw huge movements. And sterling dollar, we started the month up above 130 and we saw a lower just above 114. On sterling euro, we started the month at 117 and got down to 105 at one point. So that's what we call extraordinary. So despite everything going on in the world news-wise, currency markets aren't really reacting or haven't reacted in May to extraordinary. Having said that, over the course of the month, sterling has been the worst performing currency of the major currencies. Several reasons for that, really. The first, and you'll be familiar with these, I suspect, from reading any paper, is the death toll that we've seen in the UK. So we've now got the second highest death toll in the world after the US, a lot higher than peer countries, and that's one of the reasons why sterling's performed so badly this month. Secondly, if we're just looking at economics, there's talk of the Bank of England cutting interest rates below zero in the UK in their upcoming meetings. So at the moment they're at 0.1%. The governor of the Bank of England, Andrew Bailey, and some of the colleagues on the panel, the interest rate setting panel of the Bank of England, they've left the door open to cutting interest rates at their future meetings, and that'd be pretty unprecedented if they do that, and not good for the pound. So people know that could happen as an option, so hence it's reflected in value of sterling at the moment. Third reason is what's seen as a pretty chaotic government at the moment. Their response to the virus has been criticised, especially, I guess, the main points being the timing of lockdown. Could they have acted earlier on the lockdown? Testing, could we have done more testing originally, and should we be doing more testing now? So that's hurt the pound. And fourthly, and not really linked to coronavirus, but something we'll talk about later, is Brexit. That's still going on in the background. Negotiations between the EU and the UK are supposed to be progressing. Doesn't sound like they are. Doesn't sound like they're making much headway. And there's been a few comments this month from EU and UK officials which have hurt the pound, really just because they've outlined the lack of progress that's been made and been criticising each other. And invariably, whenever that happens, it's the pound that suffers, no matter which side. Although the kind of bad news reflects on the UK and the EU as well. The pound suffers, the euro is pretty resilient when we get that kind of news story. So yeah, so to recap on what I've said so far, lots going on in the world. Currency markets haven't reacted particularly in the last month to that. But having said that, the pound has been the worst performing currency of the majors over the last 4 weeks. Recently, we've started to see lockdown measures being relaxed. The European countries started off really with that, starting to allow restaurants to open, starting to relax some of the travel restrictions, the quarantine restrictions that had been in place. We are a little bit behind that, so we've just imposed our travel quarantine, as you probably be aware from the news. We have announced that shops can start to reopen as of the middle of next month. So we're all getting there. Everyone's taking small steps to get their economies going again, and you would expect that will only move forward. And so what we'll be looking at really is as countries do that, how does the economy recover? Is it, can they just get straight back into growth and start getting back towards normal very quickly and easily? Or are they going to have issues? Are they going to struggle? Is there going to be scarring to the economy that's happened over the last 2 months that it makes it harder to recover from, harder than we envisaged? And so we're watching really closely to see what happens. Governments and central banks are going to be doing everything they can to support their economies. So we've seen over the last couple of days, it looks like the Europeans are going to approve a 750 billion euro scheme to help the recovery of their economies. It's going to be targeted at the economies which suffered worse. So Italy and Spain are going to be the main benefactors of this. And the interesting part about that is 500 billion of that amount is grants. So it's seen as free money, really, that's going to be going to the countries that need it the most. In the UK, the Bank of England are expected to announce another 200 billion package to help shore up the UK economy. So we know that governments and central banks are going to be doing everything they can to help the economies recover, and we just need to see whether that works. Hopefully it does, and if it does, then it should be good for the currencies associated with every economy. If they struggle, then it's going to mean problems for the currencies associated with those economies. So we're watching that closely. The issue we have with this is obviously what we make these judgments on is economic data that's always backwards looking. So a good example of this is we're probably going to have Q2 economic data, so kind of GDP coming out in about 2 or 3 months' time. You're going to see huge contractions in economies when those come out. I think the UK in Q2 is expected the economy is expected to have shrunk by 17%, which is enormous. It's unprecedented. But by the time we have that information, we know, or we hope that the economy is going to be in much better shape, and we're going to be entering into a recovery phase. So what you'd expect is the markets to make decisions based on their thoughts and their kind of assumptions on where the economy is now, rather than the data that we're looking at, which is reporting a month, 2, 3 months in the past. But we'll see, because that data is all you've got to make the judgments on. So yeah, the main thing is moving ahead, seeing how economies recover. The danger for everybody is if there's a second outbreak. So as restrictions are relaxed, is there a second outbreak of the virus later in the year? The main worry, I guess, would be around winter time, going into Q4. If that does happen, then you're looking at worst case, potentially lockdown starts all over again, economy shut down again, and that would obviously be disastrous on several levels. So that's one danger that that is out there for later in the year. The other danger moving ahead is really UK, to the UK, and that's the Brexit negotiations. I mentioned these earlier on. They're going on at the moment, or they're meant to have been going on. We have got a deadline at the end of the year to reach an agreement with the with the EU about our future relationship, both in terms of trade and just the entirety of the relationship. Boris has been saying ever since he was elected, really, that this will be agreed by the end of the year. They'll get it done. It'll be a great trade agreement, a great overall agreement for the UK. There's a lot to do. There's not much time to do it, and obviously the virus has taken everyone's attention away from negotiations, and rightly so. Everyone's been focused on the virus. So it's it's challenging. It's going to be really challenging to get that done. There is an opportunity between now and the end of June to ask for an extension to this deadline. Again, Boris has said they won't be asking for an extension. The EU has really been saying it'd be crazy not to ask for an extension because both sides are so far apart right now. There's very little chance that they're going to reach an agreement by the end of the year. And the EU have accused the UK of running down the clock really to try and pressure the EU to make some compromises. So this kind of language is familiar. We've seen it over the last few years. It's all part of the negotiation process. Problem is, it hurts the pound. So all this negotiation, it's the more it comes into the press, it's going to hurt the pound. It's not going to be seen as a good thing. The only good outcome would be, I think, for the pound if the UK do ask for an extension. If they do, then I think that'll be seen as positive. If they don't and they still try and force it through, then I think it'll be seen as risky for the pound. So we'll be watching that really closely, and that's unlikely to have much impact on the euro because the euro has been pretty resilient throughout this whole Brexit process. It doesn't seem to have been affected too much, but it all falls on the pound. So we'll be watching that, and that is all really going to happen next month, like I said, because this deadline is at the end of June. So we're going to see lots of comments in the press, I suspect, and lots of announcements in Sunday papers from EU negotiators and UK negotiators, and we'll watch with interest what they say. I expect it to go down to the wire. So that's about it, really. Recapping, May was a memorable month for everyone in terms of what's going on in the world and the news. Currency-wise, we didn't see extraordinary movements in currencies, but it was a bad month for the pound, falling by about 3% across the board against the other majors. Looking ahead, I'm going to be keeping a close eye on how the UK and global economies start to recover. We would hope we're through the worst of the pandemic now and the economic impact that's had. So hopefully it's positive now and the recovery is rapid and smooth, and there are no issues with it. We can get people back to work. That's the hope. The other hope is that the virus doesn't come back. We don't have a second outbreak that interrupts recovery and people's health, and so everybody can start to adjust and not social distance too much and whatnot. And the third thing to keep an eye on is the Brexit negotiations. June's a big month, as I mentioned. If we need to extend the deadline to reach a deal with Europe, we need to ask for that extension by the end of June and expect us to run the clock down on that as much as possible, just to try and get the Europeans to compromise on a few issues, I guess, that we're disagreeing on. But we will find out how that goes over the next few weeks. Hope you've enjoyed this. If I've not covered something that you would be interested in knowing a bit more about, then feel free to email us or give us a call and we can talk about that. Or we can add it into next month's roundup. This is the first one we've ever done, so feedback is welcome and we'll try and improve the month on month, but hopefully it's been useful and you've enjoyed it. Okay, take care.